It's your open source advocate, and I'm back. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about cleaning things up and doing things the right way, because something bit me that was something I should have known better than to do. But I realized if I did it, maybe you guys might do it as well. So I wanted to kind of talk about it and what it is. So let me just bring up a browser here, and we'll just check out some of these sites that I've shown you how to install different things over time. So let's just say Portainer for all my containers here. And it goes to my IP address that I have set up on that server. Well, this is always the IP address that I've shown you guys. And the other day, sadly, I had a big blackout of power for about 15 minutes. But I mean, it shut off. Everything went off. Now, of course, I run these things on laptops, so they were okay. But my networking equipment all turned off. My Eero, my routers, my switches, my internet at home, that kind of stuff. So that really made it kind of a trick. To do anything while the power was out. But once the power came back, I was like, okay, great, everything's back up. I made sure servers were started and running, made sure, nothing shut down, that kind of stuff. Just physically went and checked them. I like to do that when there's a power bump like that anyways. And everything seemed okay. And then at one point I decided I'm going to go to, check out my analytics. Analytics.org. Let's go. Yeah, we'll go here. So go into my analytics here, and I'm trying to look, and it doesn't come up with this screen. It comes up with a screen that says, "Oh my gosh, there's a problem." At first it didn't even want to route to the stuff that I had, so it was just telling me I can't find the page. I don't know what you're talking about. So my second instinct is, okay, let's go open up Portainer and make sure everything started back up like I expect. So I don't run all my containers all the time. I turn different things on and off as I feel like it and want to test something else, So I run some of these guys. Now, some of these guys, sometimes I run them all the time. These I don't have on right now for a reason. I'm testing some different stuff, so I've got them turned off. But, these guys I do keep up most of the time. And, I thought, okay, let me go check this out. So I try to go to Portainer, it doesn't come up. I'm like, okay, something's wrong with the IP. Maybe my NIC didn't reconnect, so I try to SSH over, it doesn't go. Okay, that tells me there's something wrong with the networking, right? Okay, no problem. So I literally leave the house, come out to where my office is, get onto that laptop that's this server, and start kind of checking things out. And I look and I'm like, well, no, everything's running in Docker, from here. And I didn't go to Portainer, but, I just brought up the terminal. And, when you bring up the terminal, so I use a program called CTOP. If you haven't seen that, there's a video out there for it. So let me just log in. And oops. Oh, SSH. That always helps. If you tell it what you actually want to do, it makes a difference. So if I do CTOP, so I did CTOP on the terminal there locally on the machine, and this is what I see. And I'm like, okay, well, everything's running. What is going on? And it just never dawns on me that when that power bump happened, for some reason, it told all of my network stuff to reassign IP addresses. So I just haven't run across this problem for the last year or so where it reassigned IP addresses. So what happened was my machine that runs this server got reassigned a new IP address, and I didn't realize what it was. So I went and I grabbed Angry IP Scanner, from one of my remote machines. And this is a great tool if you haven't seen it. Now, this is kind of a dark mode. It's kind of weird looking like this, but you click on this thing and you let it run and scan your network, and it goes out and says, let me find all of the different devices on the network, and I'm going to ping them real quick. And it basically runs an nmap scan of your network and comes back with some information that you can use to identify different machines. Now, I leave it with a little pop-up so I know exactly what it's done, but you can also watch down here and you can see as it goes down to 0 threads, it's about to be finished, so there we go. And then you can, of course, sort by ports, but I wanted to sort by name because I knew the name of the machine I was looking for. And I go down, and lo and behold, I find it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing just changed IP addresses. It's got a new IP address. So that's my fault, because inside of your settings in any Linux distribution, any Windows OS, and any Mac OS, you can set for your machine to have a static IP address. And you should. If this is going to be a server machine that you're using for things that you intend to continue using and not just testing, you should go and set a static IP address. So if you haven't done that, please go do that. It's not hard to do. In Linux, it's pretty easy. There's always networking controls in the menu bars or somewhere that you can access and then change basically your IP address and set it as a static IP address. Manually enter it, and then you're ready to go. The other thing you can do is actually on your router, and you should do this, is to go into your router software and set up a static IP address for those machines. Now, I can't really show you how to do that because every router out there has a different user interface. Unfortunately, it is not something where I can just show you and you're going to be like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. It might be similar, but if you go from Linksys to Netgear to D-Link to TP-Link to MikroTik to Eero to whatever, they're going to be very different interfaces and very different steps that you follow to do that. But if you dig in and you go look for a little bit of help and you just type in, how to set static addresses on my devices using TP-Link, you're going to get about 100 different Google hits that'll tell you, and there's probably a few YouTube videos out there that will actually show you and walk you through the steps of how to do it so you can set those. So having it set on the router and then set the same manually on your device, that will make sure that it does not change IP addresses like it did to me when I had this power bump, because that really cost me a lot. I've been screwing around with this now for about half a day. Last night pretty late, trying to get everything back and running, where I could access it and do it. And one of the problems that it did cause is because of the way I run my MySQL server on this machine. So if I'm logged into that machine directly, if I do MySQL-U Brian-P, it's going to tell me I can't do this, I don't understand, bind address equals 0000. So I've set this up so that I can access it remotely from other machines, because I'm never actually on this physical machine, but I use tools like dbeaver, to connect to it. So if I open up a dbeaver, community here, and this is another one I've done a video on. So if I open it up, it'll come up, and then I'll want to connect remotely to that machine, and that's why I have it set this way. So I had to go change some settings to make sure that my database wasn't corrupted or messed up for some reason. And this is all going on before I figured out, oh man, I really messed up when I did this. So now I can get on here and I can check out again and see all of my databases that I'm running for all these different things. So I run an actual physical MySQL or MariaDB instance on the server, and then I connect my Docker containers to that, and I run a lot of the different containers out of a single MariaDB host with different tables or different databases set up with their own tables in it. Just for me, out of convenience, I could probably do it in a Docker container too, the same way. For me, it's just as easy to run it this way, so that's the way I do it. But again, if you haven't seen dbeaver, it's a really cool tool. I've got a video out there on it if you're looking for some good tools for using MySQL GUI tools, or if you're looking for dbeaver actually does tons of different types of SQL: MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, Oracle SQL. I mean, just so many different types. There's a lot of them out there, and it has a whole list of things that you can basically go and connect to. So it's really cool. I like dbeaver a lot. It's the community edition, but they have professional editions as well if you need more capabilities than that offers. So it's pretty awesome. Anyways, so I keep pointing out other videos you can go watch of mine, but it's because I do cover a lot of the things that I'm telling you about right now, so that you understand why I'm telling you what I'm telling you right now. So I run all of these things, and I depend on these things, right? Analytics is this Matomo system that just checks on my show notes site out on the web to see how many hits I'm getting, to make sure that it's still worth it for me to make the show notes. A little bit of that comes from you guys commenting, saying, hey, I checked out your show notes. Or, today I had somebody who said, okay, I'm looking for your show notes, I don't see them, and it's because I hadn't finished them yet. The video was uploaded, and I was running behind, so because of all this stuff, so I had to get the show notes updated real quick. But it let me know that somebody's looking for them, which is great. But just checking this to see what the numbers look like helps me also understand, like, yeah, people are checking it out, that's good. My Nginx proxy manager, of course, for things that are coming in, where I have an outside address. This one I've got a video coming out next week, so I hope you'll like this one. It's really cool. It's another one that's basically a monitoring system for your sites, and this is one that sends emails whenever your site statuses change, which this is kind of how I knew something had happened, because this stuff came back up and it immediately sent me an email to say, hey, I can't reach this site, and I was like, why? Okay. So there's just all kinds of things that were happening that were kind of giving me hints, but I'm a little bit of a blockhead sometimes, and I didn't realize that my IP address had changed on that server, and it's, again, because I didn't go set it static, and I didn't set it to be the same IP all the time. So now I've done that, I've remedied that problem, And I just want to let you guys know, you should really go take a look at that. You should really go remedy that problem before it becomes a problem, so that you don't run into the same thing I did, because it's really frustrating when you know you have a whole bunch of stuff and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, all my data is going to be gone, or oh my gosh, something's really bad. No, it's just the IP address changed, and I needed to go fix it. So I kind of wanted to reach out to you guys and tell you about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, somebody asked me the other day, hey, you know, I have all these things that I've been running that you've been showing me how to run, but how do I update it? So it depends on how you start your container as to how you update it. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So I'm just going to stay on this server. I'm going to do an ls here, and I've got a few of these where I set up, you know, a different, you know, a folder so that we could run something and you could see it. So if I want to update something that I'm running, which is, this is dangerous because I haven't looked to see what the updates look like, but you know, we can do that. Let me find one that I want to check out here real quick. Something simple. Let's see. So NTO PNG. Let's just cd into that folder. So you cd into the folder and you do an ls, you see Docker Compose. So if you have Docker Compose, if you're using Docker Compose, even if the site is running, so even when you have the site running, you can update a system that's running through Docker Compose, which is cool. I like that. That's awesome. So Docker Compose makes it really easy, and I want to kind of tell you how to do that. So let me first just start this up. Docker Compose up dash D. We'll go to 192.168.7.125, which I can do now because I set it statically. Yeah, there it comes, and we can log in. And it's going to start collecting statistics, which is great. So that's running. Okay, so it's up and running. Now let's just say that I want to make sure I've got the latest version. So you can just do docker-compose pull, P-U-L-L. It's going to go out and check to see if there's any new versions. It says there is for Redis, so that's good. So it downloaded a new version of the Redis stuff, but it's telling me we're already up to date for NTO PNG. That's fine. Now I want to say docker compose up -D again. I'm not stopping it. I'm not turning it off. I'm just going to run this again. It's going to go through, bring up the new Redis database, and then I need to come back here and probably refresh, you know, just to kind of get it to make sure it's taking the new stuff here. But we should be able to kind of see what's going on. We can go click on here. We can see some different information, and then we can say, you know, one. There we go. Now we're going to get some statistics out of our different things that it starts running, which is great. Maybe. There we go. Yeah. So see, now we're getting some stuff coming in through NTO PNG. So that's how you update a Docker Compose. Now, if you're running something with just Docker, the way that I know to do it is I generally do, so let me find one that's just running Docker. We'll just cd back out of this, ls. We'll clear it, ls. And let me make this text bigger. I'm sorry. I forget sometimes to do that. I know you guys look at this on the phone sometimes and you want to be able to see what I'm doing. ls, there we go. Yeah, so we've got AirSonic, we've got Chow, we've got, let's see, is Chow, cd Chow, oops, cd Chow. Yeah, so Chow is just running through a Docker command, so let me do clear, let me do history. If you're ever looking for the command you use, pipe grep Chow. Sometimes you can go back and find them by using history, but if you're like me and you type in the terminal all the time, you're not going to be able to find that original command potentially. So it's worthwhile to have some notes. Let's go see if I've got notes here. Yeah, so here's my notes for Chow, and this is the way that we run Chow. So this will be in another video. Don't sweat it. But I want this Docker command basically because I need to have it. And there's a bunch of stuff that, you know, as far as getting the emails and things like that set up that we have to have. So it's easy enough to go and set this back up again. I don't think I use their default ports for Chow, so I'll have to change that, of course. But we can go and we can check out Chow here. So I want to do Docker stop chow. Okay, so we've stopped chow. Now with just regular Docker stuff, you have to do docker pull, and you want to say what that image is. So in this case, it's back here. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but I can see it good enough to and we'll see if it has a new version. I don't think it will. It's already the latest version, but if it had a new version, it would have pulled that down. Then we would do docker rm chow. Now I don't want to do this because I want to keep that container that I've got running, but you remove the current container and then you rerun the docker command that you used to set it up in the first place. So basically this command. So it's good to keep notes of what docker commands you run whenever you're going to do something like chow, as far as just running it as docker run. That's kind of where Docker Compose, in my opinion, beats out just the straight up Docker command, is that I don't have to go rerun the Docker Compose. I just do Docker Compose pull, Docker Compose up -d, and it kind of does the restart for me, which is really nice. And all this stuff's in a file anyways, but you can just create a Docker run file if you want to. It's just called docker run.txt inside the folder that you want, the same way you do Docker Compose.yaml, and that way you've got it when you need it. But once you do that, then you should be back up on the latest version. But you do have to delete the current container, and if you haven't set a volume to help you keep track of the information, or a database connection to help you keep track of that stuff depending on the container and whether it needs it, then that could be problematic, because when you delete that container, you could be potentially deleting data that you don't want to lose. So that's another kind of downside of doing things with Docker and not really knowing what you're doing. Sometimes you want to have persistent volumes set up, so that's whenever we do the -v and we tell it, map, slash chow slash data to :/HTML, whatever, right, www.html slash data, whatever it is. So we map something on our host to our client, and we want it for that reason. But so if you have straight up Docker run commands, this is how you do it. So you stop the container, pull the latest one, remove the container, and then rerun that command to basically start up that new container and make sure that you've got all the updated images and things. Now you can also have a lot of extra images that you should go through and clean up, and you can see those by doing Docker images, and you can check it out and see, like, okay, I see Matomo. Do I only see it once? Yes. Okay, good. And look and see if you see like extra versions of things, and you usually want the latest or the highest number version. You don't want the ones that are older. Just make sure you're not deleting an image for a container that you're currently running, because then you got to go and pull it back down. It's just a waste of bandwidth for one thing. But so that's the way you do this. And then to delete an image, you do docker rmi, which is remove image, and then whatever the image name is. So if I wanted to get rid of, I don't know. I think I've gotten rid of all my extraneous ones for now. We'll just use it as an example. Apache. I can just type AMP and hit tab in the Linux command line, and it's going to say I'm going to get rid of Apache latest, which is right here. Apache latest, and then I would hit enter, and it would remove that image from the system. I don't want to do that because I'm using Apache, but just as an example, that's how you would do that. So one more time. If it's this, I'm going to say docker stop the name of the container. And if you don't know which containers you're running, you can do docker ps. Now this is going to look ugly, but you can find the names of your different containers. And sometimes if you don't tell it a specific name, then Docker just gives it a weird name, so you just have to go find that. Otherwise you can use the container ID and some other things like that. So find the one you want, highlight the ID, and paste it as well. But you need to stop that container. Then you do docker pull, and then the container name, game/chow. So make sure you type it in correctly. It'll go look and see if it's the latest, and if it is, it'll tell you, and you don't have to do anything. If it's not, it'll pull down the latest one, and you'll see it kind of do the thing that Docker does. And then you want to do docker rm the container name. I don't want to do it, but that's what you would do. And then you would rerun your Docker command to start your container back up and get everything going again. So make sure when you type in that Docker command and you're happy with it, go back and copy that thing and save it in a text file, save it in notes. I use Joplin notes for most of my stuff because it's easy to get back to. But yeah, make sure you've got all that stuff saved somewhere. And then We're going to cd out of this, cd into PNG. So if you have one that's a Docker Compose file, this is much easier. You just do Docker Compose, pull, and then it'll run and pull out all the newest stuff. And then once you do that, you just do Docker Compose up -D again. You don't ever have to do Docker Compose stop or Docker Compose down or any of that stuff. Just Docker Compose up -D again, and that will start up your container, and you'll have the newest stuff, and you're good to go. So I hope that helps you guys a little bit with just kind of keeping things cleaned up, you know, making sure you're staying up to date on stuff. I'm not the best either about updating some of my containers. Sometimes they just run so well I don't even think about it. And then I'll get out there and try to do a video for you guys, and I realize something that I use all the time at home I've put out on a VPS, and it's got new features, and I'm like, oh man, I need to go get that. So you know, just try to keep things up to date. One, there's security features that get updated a lot of times too, so it's better to it's definitely a benefit to keep things up to date if you can. I know you don't want to break your workflow sometimes and things like that, but it's definitely worthwhile. So a little bit of tips on Docker, a little bit of tips on just doing things on your network to keep it clean. So I have that static IP address, especially on servers that you want to use all the time. You know, your local static IP is really important. I'm going to talk about dynamic DNS in a video that's coming up soon. For those of you who want to reach back into your network from the outside, where you might have an IP address from your ISP that changes occasionally, it can be really useful to have that, so you don't have to go update a bunch of records. But we'll talk about that in the future. I hope this was useful for you. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.